the greatest capitalist in the history.
Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States.
Alright folks, the US elections are done and the results could not be more clear. Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States of America. He became only the second US president ever to have two non-consecutive terms in the White House, after Grover Cleveland did it between 1885 to 1889 and then 1893 to 1897. Yeah, that's more than 125 years ago. Famous left-wing documentary maker and political commentator Michael Moore said back in 2016 that Trump's victory in 2016 was going to be the biggest fuck you ever recorded in human history. Well, it was when it happened, but no more. Because despite the magnitude of the shock of Trump's 2016 election, it is undeniable at this point his 2024 victory is the biggest fuck you of them all. And we are going to tell you why. Welcome to the Bharat Perspective, and today we are going to talk about Donald Trump's landslide victory over Kamala Harris in the US presidential elections 2024. Now, step back a minute and imagine the odds that Donald Trump has overcome. In January 2021, after the Capitol Hill riots, he looked done and dusted. It was over for him. Republicans were leaving him in droves, he was being condemned by people across the board, and his political career seemed done for good. There was no one, absolutely no one, who thought there was any way back for him. He was supposed to go out in the sunset and pass out his remaining days in ignominy, surrounded only by his dearest friends and family, humiliated and chastised and resoundingly defeated. Well, that's how it would have gone for most people. But Donald Trump is not most people. Within months, he was back out there, casting his dice in the Republican primary races for the 2022 midterm elections for the House and the Senate seats. The only thing going for him at this point was that the Republican support base was firmly behind him. That was the only silver lining for him at the end of a very, very dark cloud. But that was enough. With that support, he ensured that he purged the party of the anti-Trump politicians and practically made it impossible for any Republican House and Senate candidate to win without his support. USA! USA! And with the tides of destiny firmly by his side, he managed to do precisely that. But his troubles were only beginning. Donald Trump was slapped with multiple cases related to his alleged involvement in the January 6 Capitol Hill riots and efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Over the course of the next 1.5 years, he was dragged to the court several times. There's even a mugshot of him, one time that he was arrested before being let out on bail. But somehow, despite the horde of cases against him and felony convictions and the shadow of January 6 looming large over his horizon, he just continued to ratchet up the support he required to become the Republican nominee for the US presidential election 2024. And when the Republican primaries did begin, it was more a formality than anything else. Donald Trump did not attend one single primary debate, as has been the long-time convention. And despite his absence, there was not one moment when it looked like anyone other than him might end up as a Republican nominee. Eventually, the air of inevitability did give in to the inevitable, and he was indeed elected the Republican nominee. But the biggest spectacle was yet to unfold. Merely 2 days before the Republican National Convention in July, Trump was shot at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and by all accounts, he would have been dead if not for the most extreme form of favor that Lady Luck bestowed on him. The bullet missed his head by a sheer scale of a hair's width, and that too only because he turned his head at the absolute last minute. There are many questions surrounding the assassination attempt, like how in the hell was it possible for someone to take a shot at a presidential candidate with dozens of security officials around him? plenty of things to question regarding that, but we will ignore them for now. Nevertheless, the bottom line is Trump managed to overcome it and was formally nominated by the Republican Party 2 days later. Though the drama did not end there. He survived another assassination attempt a couple of months later.
There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here.
Now, throughout it all, there was this one consistent message that was played on repeat at full blast across all the institutes of information dissemination in the USA that Donald Trump was a fascist and a Nazi who would end American democracy as it is known. Donald Trump would persecute political opponents and destroy them, it was claimed. At the same time, that his opponents were doing everything possible to destroy him. Imagine the irony. Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, it was claimed, while his opponents were attempting every possible way to ensure that voter IDs are not required to vote in elections. Donald Trump was also declared unhinged, unstable, and unchecked by the very same people who vowed to everyone that Joe Biden is at the peak of his mental prowess. The mainstream media and the American academia establishment are so good at bullshitting that they managed to convince even themselves that they were winning. When Biden was still the presumptive Democratic nominee for 2024, all polls showed that Donald Trump had an almost insurmountable lead over the incumbent president. After Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance in June, when it became impossible to hide it from the people that the sitting president of the United States is demented and mentally incapable of discharging his responsibility, suddenly the media establishment, which, mind you, had been telling the American people only a couple of days earlier that claims of Biden being senile were fake news, wanted him gone and gone as soon as possible. Right after that, strings were pulled behind the scenes, and ultimately Biden was forced to drop out of the race, paving the way for Kamala Harris to lead the charge.
This is CNN Breaking News.
President Joe Biden has just announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race.
Everyone knew the circumstances under which Kamala Harris became the formal nominee of the Democrat Party for 2024. They should have known that defeating Trump was going to be an uphill task, but it was time for Brad's summer, and everyone suddenly was convinced that normal everyday Americans will suddenly forget everything that happened before and jump on the bandwagon for a Kamala victory. It is unbelievable that at any point the Democrats thought they were going to win. What happens when you put the most charismatic American leader of the 21st century against a person who has the charisma of a rotten potato? Yeah, they eventually found out. Now let me come to the main part, what it means to the American public. Well, Donald Trump's election win was a big fuck you to every piece of conventional political wisdom. Studies show that throughout the campaign, Kamala Harris received upwards of 75% positive media coverage. On the contrast, Trump's coverage was 85% negative. Yet, Americans just did not give a fuck. Kamala Harris had the Avengers cast, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, whatever her name is, and various other Hollywood and music superstars campaigning for her at her events. Whereas Trump mostly had just Trump at his rallies. And before long, he had Elon Musk. And by the day of the polls, he had Joe Rogan and several other top podcasters by his side. I just simply can't see how people are unhappy over the results. I mean, the candidate of one of the most intelligent humans alive won over the candidate endorsed by glorified Dehati orchestra artist. I mean, that's a good thing. No, that's a good thing by all accounts. Donald Trump's win on the 5th of November was a fuck you to the mainstream media that has turned into a propaganda machinery. It was a fuck you to the scientific community, air quotes, that wants to gaslight you into thinking a man can get pregnant and a woman can have testicles. It was also a fuck you to the entertainment industry that believes just any idea about the daily struggles of the ordinary people. And don't forget, it was also a huge fuck you to the permanent bureaucracy in Washington that believes it can continue to rule forever from the shadows, and the NGO activist complex that believed it can continue to be parasites till eternity.
We love you! We love you!
Overall, it was a humongous fuck you. Now, there remains only the small thing of Trump doing precisely what he campaigned on. It didn't quite turn out the way in 2016, but in 2024, he has Elon Musk by his side and genuinely talented people like J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy and Tulsi Gabbard at his corner. Things could well turn out to be very different. Well folks, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching this video. Like, share and drop your comments below and tell us what you think. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel.